Hello and welcome. My name is Lily and I'm a storyteller. And I'm very excited to be in the midst of doing the 100-day project, every day doing a little bit of something towards my storytelling practice, the fruits of which are posting one story a week. So over the next 3 and some months, you will be hearing a folk tale from me weekly. So thank you so much for tuning in. And before we begin today, I think it's important that maybe we just take a moment to stop, to arrive here in the moment, and to get ready for the story by opening our eyes, our minds, and our hearts. And we'll do this by taking a breath together. So you can close your eyes if you'd like or not, but we'll begin by breathing in. So breathing in through your nose, and exhaling out through your mouth. Joining this space here together. All right, let's begin. There was once a lonely cottage deep in the mountain of Wales. In this small cottage lived a mother and her daughter, Morden, which means a star in Welsh. Now, Mordin's mother always had a good phrase to hand, how to act in life. It's best to start your work early, as to not waste the day. If you enter a new situation and are unsure, hold your tongue, wait before speaking until you know more. If something is scary, it's best to do it quick. Now, these were lovely phrases, but words can't be eaten, can they? And the thing was, food was hard to come by in this house. They were poor. They slept together in one bed. Morden didn't even have shoes. And when it was her 12th birthday, and her birthday cake was brought in front of her, and it was made of leaves and mud, she decided it was time to make her way out into the world and see if she could change her fortune. The next morning, the sun rose high in the sky. It was green everywhere, as it often is in Wales. And she put on the one apron that she owned. She smoothed it in front of her. She placed the crust of a bread in a small piece of cloth. And she kissed her mom goodbye. She set off on the road, leading away from their small cottage. She had no shoes on her feet, but she kept walking. She walked down through the hills. She walked until the sun was starting to make its way up into the sky because, of course, she had set off early as to not waste the day. Now, after some time had passed, she came to a large parcel of land that seemed to belong to a great manor that rose there in the center of it all. It was surrounded by gardens. There were beautiful rose bushes. There were trees laden with fruit growing. There was a gardener who was out at work. She walked up to him and she asked, "Please, sir, do you think that here at this manor I might find some work? I am strong and I could certainly be put to good use." The gardener took off his cap. He rubbed his hair and he said, "Well, I'm not sure if it's here that you wish to stay, young miss. You see, there was the master of this house, a young boy, maybe your age, but he was stolen away by a wicked witch. We presume he is dead, and it is his uncle now who rules over us, and let's just say he's not the nicest." Morden thanked the gardener. She took a step back and she thought, and now she was quite hungry and the sun was getting quite high in the sky, so might as well give it a try. If something's scary, best to do it quickly. So she marched her way up to the front door of that manor. She smoothed her apron over her. She knocked on the door once, twice. Before the third knock, the door swung open. And there was standing a tall, imposing, glowering man. He was dressed in all black. There was a black handkerchief in his hand. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "I am supposed to be in mourning. Please, please, sir. I am strong. I can cook, I can clean, I can even cut wood. Give me some work here on your manor. Cook, clean, chop wood. I have all of the people I need to do that. Your work is not needed here. If you really want to make yourself helpful, why don't you go find the leaves that hung but never grew? Slam! With that, he shut the door in her face. What a rude man, thought Seren. I may not have shoes on my feet, but surely I do not deserve to be treated this way. And the leaves that hung but never grew. I've never heard of them. But you know what? I will find them, and I will bring them back here, and I will not give them to him until he says please. And so Seren set off. She walked past the gardener, she walked past the gardens, and she kept on going. She went through fields. The sun was high in the sky, and there was sweat beading on her brow. She came to a river that was flowing, burbling gently along, and next to it there were some trees. She thought that she would sit, have a break against the heat, and just take a moment to collect herself and her thoughts. No sooner had she thought this, she saw something moving there by a hazel tree in the corner of her eye. And it was a man. But it was no man she had ever seen before. In fact, he was short, so short, and his ears were pointed. He must be one of the fair folk, the fairies that live across Wales. Seren bowed her head. Good afternoon, sir. How are you? The man, he was delighted at being addressed so politely. Well, thank you, I'm very well. And how are you? What is it that brings you here to this very river and this very tree on this very day? Well, you see, I'm on a quest. I'm on a quest to find the leaves that hung but never grew. Have you heard of them? Can you help me? When he heard the words that she was speaking, the small man's face, it turned pale. Well, they say that in this land, when this first land was created, there was just one tree with 7 silver branches that reached up towards the sky. And there was a great storm one night. And in that night, lightning struck the tree. And there the next morning, 7 gold leaves grew from those 7 silver branches. These are the leaves that hung, but never grew. It's said that if you collect all of them, you can get whatever it is that you wish for. Now us fair folks, we collected the leaves and we've kept them safe in our special place. But they were stolen by a wicked witch, and now it is she who has them. It is best if you turn around and you forget about your task. This is a surefire way to get eaten. I'm not afraid of witches, said Seren. And out of curiosity, if someone was to find these leaves, what should they do with them? Well, said the small man, you would simply need to bury them here beneath this hazel tree that we have met at, and us fair folk would start protecting them again, and you would have good fortune for the rest of your life. But as I said, it's not worth it. Turn back. Now Seren, she was determined, and she thanked this fair folk, this small man, and she went on her way. She carried on into the rest of the day. She kept walking. She walked down that river for as long as she could, and suddenly the sun was starting to set in the sky, the moon was starting to rise, and she came to the edge of a forest. Darkness was rolling its way across the land. Owls were hooting from amongst the trees, and there were surely some critters creeping and crawling around, scuttling, making noises. Seren didn't have time to feel afraid. The only thing she felt was the rumbling in her tummy, which, if anyone had been around, they would have been able to hear as well. But then there was a light coming from within the forest, and the young girl, she went towards it. She saw a perfect tidy little home. It was a cottage, sitting just there, and this was most unusual in such a strange place, but she was hungry and she was brave, and so she decided to go up and knock on the door. She had in the back of her head a thought, maybe this might be where the wicked witch is, but she hoped not. And so she went to knock. One, and almost immediately, the door swung open. There was an old woman with a smile on her face. She was wearing a spotted apron. "Young girl," she said, "what brings you here to my cottage at this time of night? What is it I can help you with?" This didn't seem like a wicked witch to her, but she remembered what her mom said, that if you are in a new situation, you're unsure, best to hold your tongue and figure out what's going on before saying more. So she kept her quest to herself. She just said, "Well, I'm so hungry. I've been traveling for so long, but I am strong. I can cook, I can clean, I can chop wood. Let me help you, and will you maybe be able to feed me in return?" "Young girl," "Saren," she said. "It's my name, Saren. As you can see, my place is pretty tidy, but how are you with animals? You see, I keep a large black boar, and if you take care of him, I might be able to take care of you in return." Saren looked around. There wasn't a stable anywhere. There didn't look like any kind of building that kept a boar, but she agreed. And so the old woman welcomed her inside the house. Saren stepped in, and she saw the strangest house she'd ever seen. One side was beautiful and tiny. There was the kitchen, there was the living room, but the other side, it was a literal pigsty. There was straw covering the floor. Some of it was black and dirty. It was matted with the poop of this big black boar that was lying there in the middle of the house with a silver chain around its neck and a silver chain holding it fast to the wall. As soon as she walked in, that boar began to sow. It began to bray. It began to make noise. "Quiet," said the old woman. "Forgive him. He's not used to guests. Now, come sit, and I'll make you something to eat." And so the old woman laid out a delicious spread. There were cold meats, there were cheeses, there were vegetables. Saren ate what must have been her first proper meal ever. And as she did, the old woman said, "So you will take care of my boar. As long as you do, I will take care of you. Do we have a deal?" Saren agreed. Now the days began to turn to weeks. The weeks began to turn to months, and at first Saren was just taking care of the boar. She was changing the straw, she was making sure he was fed and comfortable. But then her responsibilities started to increase. She was able to go out and chop the wood. She made sure that the fire stayed roaring and stalked. She brushed in front of it and kept the other half of the house clean too. And every night she would curl up in front of the fire in order to keep warm. But there was one place that Saren was not allowed to go, and that was to follow the old woman up the stairs to that top floor where she went to bed every night. Now one evening, after the old woman had gone up to bed, it was a particularly horrible night. The wind was blowing from every direction. It seemed to be entering through the chimney itself. The panes of glass were rattling in the window. That night, Saren decided to snuggle up closer to the boar. She said, "Poor boar, you must be so uncomfortable here. I'm sorry. I wish there was more that I could do for you." Imagine her surprise when suddenly the boar responded, "Well, I think there is something more you could do." Saren let a small yelp emerge from her mouth. "Shh, quiet. You'll wake her." "But you can talk. You're a boar." "Well, I can only speak when I've been spoken to, and I was really starting to think that you were never going to. What took you so long?" "I'm sorry," said Saren, and she began to blush slightly. "Well, maybe you can help help me. I'm looking for the leaves that hung but never grew, and the wicked witch who stole them. Where can I find them? Well, you've come to the right place. This is indeed the home of the Wicked Witch. When she goes up every night, she assumes her true form, and she has the leaves. Oh, please tell me how I might get them. I will, but it won't be easy. And if you're not careful, she will kill you. Or, well, after she fattens me up and kills me, she'll probably just do the same to you anyway. All right, I'll tell you what you need to do. She keeps the leaves in a small leather pouch. She has those underneath her pillow, so you have to sneak in, grab them from beneath her, and then, making sure you're quiet as quiet can be, make your way out. Saren nodded, and she let a breath enter as she felt her heart starting to beat in her chest, because she knew if something was scary, it was best to do it quick. All right, I'm gonna do it now, she said. And so that very moment, she stood up and she began to make her way up those stairs that she never had before. Each time she placed one foot on the next stair, she paused, hoping that the creaks weren't too loud. It seemed like it was the longest staircase in the world, if not the creakiest, but eventually she made her way to the landing. It was completely dark, and all of a sudden she could hear a strange noise. Her heartbeat started to get faster in her chest. Saren swung open the door, letting her eyes adjust, and there was that noise. She realized it was the snoring of the witch. The stench of the room hit her first. As her eyes adjusted, she saw that there was rotten food strewn all over the floor. There were flies buzzing above it. Cobwebs were hanging from the roof. And there, in the corner, lying in her bed asleep, was the witch. Saren, slowly but surely, with deft feet, began to pick her way through. She made her way right up to the bed, and she saw that the countenance of the old woman had changed. Now there was only sallow skin, gray like leather, covered with boils and patches, hands that looked like claws themselves, clutching at the bedspread. Saren reached her hand underneath the pillow. The witch began to move, and Saren, as quick as she could, wrapped her hands around the small leather satchel, and she pulled it out. She slipped it inside her pocket, and she turned just as... The witch continued to sleep. Saren crept back downstairs. She made her way to the boar. She looked inside the satchel, and there indeed were 7 golden leaves, looking exactly like they must have that day that he unfurled on the branches. She touched them, and she said, "I wish that the boar was free, and I wish that we could escape." She looked over, and suddenly the collar that had been keeping the boar in place, it broke. The silver clattered to the floor. The chain that had kept him, it too released. But where there had been a boar, suddenly switched, and now there was a young boy her age. They looked at each other in the eyes, and she said, is it you? The young boy that was stolen away from the manor? It was, and I'm sure that my uncle is only pretending to be sad. He is an evil man who is glad that I am gone. Well, we have to deal with your uncle later. For now, we must escape. And so they took each other's hands, and they began to head towards the door. As soon as they went to open it, they heard a voice from upstairs. "Saren, is that you? What are you doing down there?" They both froze in a panic upon hearing the voice of the witch, but they'd invoked the magic of the leaves. And so it was the poker from the fire that stood up and began to speak. I'm just putting more wood on the flames," it said. "Okay, well, come up when you're done." The 2 young ones opened the door, and they began to run. This time, it was the broom. The broom says, "Well, I just have to sweep after that." The witch said, "Fine, but then come up after you're done." The young ones were running off now into the forest. It was the chair who said, "Okay, I'm coming up now." The witch was waiting in her bed. She strained her ear, but she couldn't hear anyone coming up the stairs. Suddenly, she leapt up from bed. She ran down the stairs, and there she saw an empty house. There was only a broken silver collar and chain. The boar was gone, and they were free. "Broom, come to me, take me, make haste, and we will catch them." She had magic enough that she could command the objects in her household, so the witch clambered onto the broom, and she left the house. Seren and the young man, they were running as fast as they could through the forest. Their breaths were heaving in their chest, but they could hear behind them the cackling sound of the witch making chase. They didn't know what to do, and Seren, she reached her hand into the sachet that held the leaves, and she said, "I wish that we would be hidden from the witch." Immediately, he turned into a river, and she a duck. The witch now flew onto the scene, and she looked around. She saw no one. "Little duck, tell me, have you seen a young boy and a young girl running past here?" The duck didn't say anything. It just dove under the water, and the witch yelled and raged, "Come, broom, let's go, we must find them!" And off they went. But the thing is, try as she might to go faster, the witch no longer had the power of the leaves. "Come on, let's go!" She gave a kick to the broom, but it would take her no farther. The magic had come to an end, and the broom, it fell from the sky, and she fell on her head, broke her neck, and lay there, dead. Upon hearing the thud, Seren and the young boy transformed back out of the river and the duck, and they became themselves. They ran all the way back to his manor just as the night was turning into day. They knocked on the door, and the uncle opened it. The young boy said, "Uncle, I'm back, I am free, and Seren, she saved me, she saved my life. I want her to stay here with us." The uncle should have looked happy, and indeed he was trying to put a strange smile across his face, but he said, "I told her to get the leaves that hung but never grew, and she hasn't. She may not stay here." "Ah, just wait," she said, "but I brought them." The uncle tried to reach out and grab them, but she took them back. She put them in her pocket. She said, "I'll give them to you later, but first, we need to sleep." Of course, you need to sleep," said the uncle. "I'll get a room made for you. Come." He opened the door and let them in, though there was no smile or kindness that had reached his eyes. They had set a grand room for Seren. There was a 4-poster bed, grander than she'd ever seen before. There were white cloths covering the bed. It was soft and bouncy, and try as she might to get comfortable in it, to get some rest, she couldn't. She was used to sleeping on the floor in front of the fire at the witch's place. So she climbed out of the bed, and she laid there on the floor. She went to sleep. She was awoken by a great thunderous sound. Boom! The entirety of the canopy of the bed had crashed onto the mattress, completely crushing it. At that sound, all of the servants ran into the room. The young boy ran into the room. They looked around, relieved to find that Seren was still standing there. The uncle entered the room, and there was no smile, no concern on his face. Only a faint frustration. Seren reached her hand into her pocket. She touched the leaves and she said, "I wish you would tell me. Was it you that tried to kill me?" There was a great changing of colors in the face of the uncle, from red to white. His mouth caught on his tongue, caught on his teeth as he tried to hold himself back from speaking, but he could not say what came next. "Yes, it was me. I tried to kill you. I will always try to kill you. I will make sure you are gone. I want those leaves, and I don't want some poor girl here with my nephew." Everyone in the room looked around, astonished. The servants went, and they called, The police. They came, they took away the uncle, and the young boy, well, he actually wasn't that concerned. He was more concerned that Seren was not hurt. Thank goodness, he said. And while that commotion was happening, well, Seren, she snuck out of the manor. She went back to that hazel tree where she met one of the fair folk, and she buried the leaves beneath it. The fair folk all smiled as they received this gift back again. Seren went back to the manor. The young boy said that her mom should be called for. They all went, they gathered there, and it's said that the three of them lived in good fortune for the rest of their lives. So there you have it. That was The Leaves That Hung But Never Grew. It is a Welsh Romani story. I found it from this book here, Welsh Fairy Tales, Myths and Legends by Claire Fayers, but there's actually another amazing interpretation of this story by Daniel Morden, and a book called Dark Stories from the Woods. I believe Dark Tales from the Woods. So you can go ahead and check that out if you're interested. Thank you very much for listening, and stay tuned for more stories.